Hello, everyone, and welcome to the new year. Just give a couple seconds to make sure everybody can join us today. So hopefully everyone's got into this session today, nice and easy, no computer glitches like myself, trying to get into today's webinar with the internet. So just wanted to welcome everybody to 2026 for those that are online today or even on demand watching this on catch up as well. So as usual, we are recording this session, so you can watch this on demand. If you do have any questions, please yell them out during the chat. We'll try to get to as many as we can today live, but most likely we'll take them offline and address them with the time that we have. So thanks everybody for joining. Today we're going to focus a little bit more on 4 ways to optimize your ITAM. So this is looking at specifically at ITAM, but looking at ways that we can drive more out of your ITAM investment. And this kind of touches a couple of different areas of your business. Just a recap. So for those that have joined us for the first time or may have missed a couple of the sessions from last year, we have these 5 sessions that are available on demand. Ash has kindly put those in the chat for you today, so you can copy those, you can watch those on demand. Each follow the same sort of format that we have today. So all of those are available to you to watch at any time that you want. Looking ahead to this year, so we've got the first 3 of the year locked in. So today, the 15th of January, we're looking at the 4 ways to optimize ITAM. Next month, we have a session around AI, because AI is the hottest topic at the moment in the market. So we're going to run a session called The Hidden Cost of AI, and really looking at the governance and risks associated with AI across your cloud and SaaS estate. And then come March, we're going to tackle another on-trend topic around data cloud optimization and looking at specifically Databricks and Snowflake. So how can Flexera help you drive a cost-optimized view of those estates as well? So plenty of great stuff coming up in the near future as well. So Ash has put those 2 registration pages available in the chat for the February and March sessions. All right, so getting stuck into the topic for today is, when we start to this and each one of these sessions, we focus in on what does that look like in the grand scheme of things within the Flexera One platform. Today, we're going to touch on primarily on the middle section here in IT asset management. That's where most of the attention, but it's hard to decouple that from IT visibility and also SaaS management. So we will touch on each of those areas as well as part of this, because visibility across all your IT assets is around IT asset management. So we want to make sure that we give credit where credit's due to each part of the platform for those that are interested as well. So that's where our focus is on today. So as we go into a number of the different areas, and there's some really good research that is coming out specifically for last year moving into this year. So technology spend is increasing year on year. And this is really relevant when we start to look at ways to optimize your IT asset management spend. Now, if we focus in on the graph here, it's going to increase year on year. Now, the causes of that, we can attribute to cloud and SaaS spend growing, 50% in the last 3 years. AI is the big push in that as well. So huge spend at 644 billion global spend in 2025. And this is going to increase. And at the foundation of all of that as well is, impact on your IT assets within your organization as well. So one call out as well as part of this is Microsoft is also implementing changes to their price structure across their Microsoft 365 business and government plans from July of this year as well. So it comes pros and cons on all of these approaches, but when we start to look at this, adding of AI and security features into these hikes, but anywhere from 5 to 33% increase on Microsoft spend this year. So we need to account for that. We need to optimize spend proactively And when we hit those marks, we're prepared for those increases. Now, the way that we look at this, and if it's the first time I've used one of these slides in these sessions, but it really aptly describes the problem that we face in IT asset management. So you as consumers of these products, of IT asset management practitioners, really have to think and broaden the perspective of across desktop, data center, cloud, SaaS, and now AI as its own functional vertical here. But the answers that we're looking to address really have what is out there, who's using it, how much is it costing me, how do I allocate budget, what's that chargeback, showback scheme look like? So we want to attribute cost within that. Where is the risk within my estate? Now, risk can be from a compliance, from a regulatory compliance, from a license, from an audit compliance perspective. But I really need to address my IT asset management estate like that as well. And am I realizing value as part of this? So it's not good enough just to know what's out there. It's not good enough to invest in a technology like Flexera. The goal here is to also realize that value as well. So what am I making back? Am I actually implementing those business processes, fundamental changes to address the cost, to remove risk? So that's what every scheme needs to remove value or increase, enhance value and gain efficiencies within the business. Now, the way that we do that, and these are some of the key areas, a lot of organizations are introducing those little, whether it's projects or programs of work across each of the 5 areas, 5 verticals up the top. In the horizontal, these are the areas that we need to be focused on. How do we optimize spend? Now, right sizing spend, forecasting what we will need within the future, or how do we remove and identify shadow IT, shadow SaaS, shadow cloud, shadow AI now even as well to remove unwanted spend or unplanned spend as part of that. The reduction of risk is key as well. Having access to all of this great data, this intelligence around that data, allows us to then look at compliance gaps, security vulnerabilities, and overall security posture. So all of these remain top priorities as well. Now, when we start to look at the increasing of those efficiencies, now not everything can be attributed to just spend and risk, but we want to make sure that we tackle the people challenge, problem, opportunity that we have as part of having access to all of this great data. So the increase of efficiency, whether that's through leveraging AI for the insights around that data, getting that outcome into the hands of people quicker, modernizing and transforming the environment. So how do we ensure that we look for opportunities there and around different areas of the business? Now, today, what we're going to do is we're going to focus in on 4 ways to optimize. Now, we start with discover the hidden inefficiencies within the organization. Now, in my experience and working with a number of organizations over the years, one of the biggest challenges is around actually getting access and collating all of that data around all the IT assets that exist out there. I'll say gone is the way, but nearly gone is the way of actually doing a manual hardware audit across your environments. Now, what IT assets are out there? Are they hidden in someone's cupboard? What's out there? So we need to improve and drive efficiencies here. Not everything has to be a manual effort here. We need to automate as much of that as possible. Now, sometimes you can't automate what's hidden and unplugged from the network and in someone's cupboard, but the goal here is to then spend time automating as much of that as possible. The key here is about the normalization and processing of that data. So we don't need to be determinate on having this one single source of data to work from. Grab as much of that data as you can from a whole range of different sources and let the solution, Flexera, to drive the efficiency and automation around the use of that data. So normalize, duplicate that data, remove the effort on trying to get to the stage where we can make decisions, and automate as much of that as possible to put that data into the hands of people who can make business and impactful decisions with the data. Next is around streamlining software and hardware tracking. So, we want to ensure that when you purchase a piece of hardware, from a vendor, from you buy, it's in a warehouse, you bring it back into the organization, that is deployed and is being used. Now, we don't want to see this sprawl of a company ordering 100 machines for only 90 of them to hit the floor. We want to make sure that there's an overlap of what's deployed and linking up with the purchases that we've made. The licensing side around software consumption. So even more important than hardware. Hardware, can be sometimes even a write-off here, but the license consumption, the over and unders, is where the biggest opportunity for savings is to be made, or biggest risk as well in terms of the unexpected audits. It's where my license consumption is over or under based on what I own. So it's a key area to look into. The other one around aligning ITAM with financial goals, or really the inability or failure to translate ITAM into business value. So what we want to ensure that, ITAM has got a bad rap, been stuck at the practitioner level for many years, and we've done a very good job as a community to try to elevate the status of ITAM within businesses and really attaching to the broader technology intelligence play. But the ability for ITAM as the custodian of that data to really drive meaningful business outcomes is the key. So whether this is through actual realized savings, not potential savings, but putting that into practice and having a tangible impact on the financial records. The ability as well to have that showback and chargeback. So we'll have a look at that in a second within the platform. But we want to demonstrate what the cost is of that hardware and software that you own within the business and drive that as a opportunity, and depending on your organization's appetite, but really driving that within that organization to say, this is what each business unit is costing, or this is what we need to reclaim back from those business units as part of a chargeback mechanism. Lastly, it's about empowering teams with better visibility. So here is really about the old adage around you cannot manage what you cannot see. So where we have disconnected data from across, SaaS, from cloud, from on-prem, and all those different endpoints, it makes it very difficult to get to these outcomes. So what we want to do is being able to have faster decision-making and stronger governance over the data. What's in my shadow IT bucket? What are the unmanaged applications? What are the SaaS applications that are not approved for use? Where's my cloud sprawl? In terms of what's being used and what's not being used. It's spun up for engineering personal test purposes. So really, what we're saying here in all of these is that modern ITAM isn't about control anymore. It's about intelligence. So we've taken visibility to insight. Now, from compliance, it's become optimization now. And from data, it becomes decisions. So what we want to do is spend a little bit more time today drilling into each of these within the platform. And I'll show you a couple of examples of how you can start to look to optimize your ITAM by keeping these 4 things in mind. Now, in every one of these sessions, I do like to bring up where other customers who are using the Flexera technologies have been able to get success using the platform. So today I thought it was quite apt to provide a few different examples of those. Now, there's a measurable impact in what they're doing. And this is a fantastic view of 5 of those organizations who have achieved those tangible results. Now, we spoke on the previous slides around the software cost avoidance. So $3 million from Memorial Care. The effort and increasing efficiency in how we manage the IT estate. So 60% reduction in software research. Now, having that complete visibility, removing those disconnected silos of information, So going out there and, it's not SSEM and other discovery technologies are simply just not good enough today to go through and discover all of the SaaS applications. We also can then bring this into the cloud realm. So looking at what you're spending across the public cloud, addressing the need for those annual cloud savings. And a great example here with Chegg with 10 million. And lastly, around technical debt. So in previous sessions, we covered across a lot about IT visibility and software currency, but reducing technical debt has that flow-on effect of cost and efficiencies and risk within the organization. So all of these things are great things to keep in mind. Today, let's jump in. We're going to focus in on those 4 key areas of the business. So let me just swap screens for a second. Alrighty. So what I'll just do, one second, up here. So we start to talk a little bit about discovering those hidden inefficiencies within the organization. What we really want to do, and this is where I take this example every single time about the deduplication, the normalization of data that we get from out there. So as I mentioned, gone are the days of going through manually auditing everything. In some cases, it's good trying to pick up things in hardware that unplugged on the network. There's an asset, but usually the software is more expensive than the asset that you're buying these days. So it becomes a bit of a lack of a cost benefit there in terms of doing those audits. But the key for us is removing that manual work and headache of normalizing and duplicating all of those assets and software assets that exist out there. Within the platform, we don't really care what data source you get that information from. Obviously, there's a Flexera inventory agent that's out there. There's the ability to import data, to connect into things like SSEM, and other technologies. So we'll grab all of that rich information. We'll grab the evidence that's required to produce a recognized application as part of that. And so we go through this process of enriching and enhancing the data that we bring into the platform. What are the upgrade and downgrade rights? What are the product SKUs associated with product use rights based on the SKUs that you've selected? What are the categorization of that software? What's the end of life and the support of that software? So all of these things are enhanced as part of this process. That's all automated and happens on a nightly basis. So we can get a near real-time view of exactly what's happening out there within your environment. The same is true around the hardware side. So you can imagine out there, I've got agents out there, I've got SSEM, I've got other data sources, which is fantastic for my data center and end-user compute space. Now, as I said, we will get data from other sources. So whether that's tapping into your SolarWinds for your network gear, storage information. We've got a spreadsheet of other detail of other information out there that fits a particular standard that we can bring in to understand what metadata exists around that hardware. So we want to make sure that we're driving, once again, the inefficiencies out of trying to manually compare all of this information and let the platform do that work for you. Get to the stage where you have a number of recognized products that you can work with, make decisions on, and have a real impact on the business. Not go through the headache of getting and managing this estate. Now, next is around streamlining software and hardware. So we want to improve compliance and reduce waste. So when I go here and look at my hardware side and my device assets. So back to what we spoke about in terms of that linkage. So coming from a background in the IT asset management space as well, what I can see here is looking at hardware that's been procured. So I can add my assets here, I can build a spreadsheet and consume that with the adapters that we have to bring that information into the platform. I can then see as well, and back to that example or analogy of 100 different assets that go out there, 90 of those hit the floor, And I can see when those have linked inventory. So I can see what assets actually hit the network and combine with information that's available as part of procurement. I can then also see information here against those assets. So if I go in to create an asset, I can go through, and this would be done on a programmatic approach. It wouldn't necessarily have to be something that you do one by one, which would be tremendous overhead. But I can then tag these details, serial number, manufacturer. I can do that from a procurement perspective. When it hits the warehouse, integrate the processes within the platform to be able to drive, that end-to-end life cycle of asset information. I can then update those statuses. So if it hits the network, whether it's now deployed into the environment, if I'm going to dispose or put something in storage, integrate your processes back in to your IT asset management discipline. The other side as well, if you start to look at software and licensing. Now, what I want to do here is look at my licenses at risk. Now, I've just taken one example. There's many different angles that you could come in on and review this data. And for example, where I've got shelfware sitting there and not being consumed, where I need to right size or repackage particular licenses. This example here looks at that risk in terms of what I've bought and versus what's being consumed. So through the various configurations that I have, through the various normalization, I get to a point here where I can confidently say that I'm actually in a negative. So my consumption here is, consumption is 39. My shortfall is negative 24. So I know there's a risk associated with this particular title. So where I'm streamlining that software process, I'm entering in all my procurement information, adding in, we have the procurement, the contracts, the purchases, add that information into the platform. And that's where the hard work goes into making a business decision and getting business outcome with the data. And then I can actually address my risk. And this is how we do that with software. Next, where we start to look at the alignment of ITAM with financial goals. Now, one of the good use cases that I always like to talk about is showback and chargeback. Now, some organizations may not have the appetite for chargeback. It's not how the business works. IT is a central bucket that, profit and loss, that's how it is. Others, want to actually just show back to the business as well exactly what's being used and consumed within the business. So we can have these showback or chargeback reports. You can tailor these according to, the views, the columns, the looks, and how you want to consume that data. I can get this information out, push it into a BI solution and get a more granular view of the data again, and then graph this up and chart that, whatever I need to do. But the goal here is that I have financial accountability or even just visibility when I'm talking showback in terms of what assets exist within the environment. What in this case here, what corporate units, I can do a cost-sensitive view of this, whatever view that I really want, using the organizational construct within Flexera One ITAM to get that view of the data that exists out there within the environment. Now, in this case here, we're focusing on those licenses. And then when this loads, and this is a big report, so it does take a little bit longer to load, but I can actually then go and see what business units are out there and consuming what, where my bigger overages are, or where my biggest risk is. So if I start to look here and just use this one because it's top of the list and it's easy to expand, but where I start to look at, where my overages are, and in this case here, a lot of these have a shortfall within this business unit. So I can start to see exactly within this particular report where my biggest risks are within that business unit. Now, if the way that I'm implementing and operating means that within this business unit, we can actually go through and identify that under Microsoft, maybe SQL Server here, I'm negative 16, put a cost in associated with that. I mean, these are thousands of dollars enterprise, probably up to nearly $10,000 per core. What the risk of that is, and this could be, $160K plus. And my math is terrible, but you get the point there. Where I start to look at one, and I'll pick one that has some data in here now, but go down a little bit for a good example, but Visual Studio. So this covers a lot of different products here. You can use the Flexera platform to work out what the preference is of how those applications are covered. But I'm -3 in terms of my licensing. So my costs here, my compliance cost, my risk cost within this particular corporate unit now is close to 17 grand. So if I'm using this showback mechanism, I can go back to that unit and say, do you really need to use those 3 licenses? Drill into the detail that sits behind this and say, can we remove 3 licenses, or do we need to increase the cost for your business unit by 17 grand? And finally, where we want to empower teams with better visibility. So this is where we start to look at, showing applications in particular, and a couple of examples here, but showing unmanaged applications. So if I want to make sure that I'm proactively managing my estate. Now, if I take the example, Visio I've focused in on a little bit here, but I can see that this is a list of everything, and I've done a quick search here on Visio, but everything that's classified as unmanaged within the environment today. So I'm being proactive. I want to actually classify these applications. Now, whether they're managed, unmanaged, what's the status of this within, and working with the enterprise architecture group or application architecture in some organizations to understand if this is a current, if this is authorized for the environment, unauthorized, what that looks like for this environment, for you as the customer. So in your organization, being proactive and managing what comes in, if I'm up to date with this detail, the next time a new application comes in, it hits this unmanaged list, and then I can proactively manage that piece of software. The same is true when I start to look at my SaaS-based applications. And so, for example, I go into here and within the Flexera One platform, look at my SaaS-based applications. I can see my total applications that are approved or not approved within the environment. And I want to focus here on, there's a number of not approved applications, and a very similar process that we just saw with on-premise software, but I can actually go through and classify this as approved or not. I can put an owner against that and also notes against that particular product. The goal here as well is I want to go through and even add my subcategory, and I can see here, show me everything that's a password management type SaaS-based application. I can see that I have 3 of those. I can see that one of those is picked up through the web browser, which is 1Password. I've also got 2 here that are picked up through a single sign-on. But as I go through here, I can see these 2 are approved and this one's not. So we can actually go through and pick out these 73 users and get them to use the approved standard. So both of these capabilities then give us a way, whether it's on-premise or whether it's a SaaS-based application, to help empower, the ITAM team, the SaaS team with understanding what's out there, having the visibility to make real-world decisions and optimize that ITAM state. We don't want unapproved or unmanaged software within the environment. It adds cost, it adds risk. Let's standardize and streamline how we're using software. All right, so just want to cut back just to the session here. So if there's a couple questions that have come through, I think I've answered them as I've been talking, just keeping an eye on those. So what we've done today is we've covered each of these different areas. Please go back, re-look at what we've covered, but if there are any questions about that, please do let me know. And I'll just end with this. It's just a link to my LinkedIn. Please, if you do have any other questions about how we can help improve how your IT asset management is being run today, please do reach out, whether that's to myself or to our fantastic partner community that can help drive real outcomes and help you start optimizing beyond those 4 ways that we've just showed you today. I appreciate everyone's time, and thank you. We'll see you again next month in February to start looking at the hidden cost of AI. Thank you.